Eugene, been a week or two since I spoke to you. Plenty happening.
Yeah, I mean, this year's been a big year. I think I've had fights every weekend, continually somewhere in the world for the last 8 to 10 weeks. So, yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good to keep everybody busy and keep the fights ticking over. So, yeah, heaps happening on all fronts.
On Saturday night you were over in Aussie with Navajo, and he certainly did his UFC chances no harm over there. It was a really good performance.
Yeah, he got a good test. He had a good opponent, good durable opponent, a seasoned opponent, someone that was able to test him, and he came through with flying colours. And it's just good. It's just good to go fighters to just get a bit of time in the cage and go through like a bit of adversity, understanding, the guy's got some defense and you have to finesse your way to the finish. You have to do things methodically and systematically. You can't just expect to blow out every opponent, because as the opponents get better and better, that doesn't become possible. So he had to do some real, actual, live problem solving in this fight, and it was just good to see him go through that process. He performed really well.
Other big news last week was Aaron being on the Contender series. Happy for that?
Yeah. I mean, we got Cameron over the line, and now Aaron's over the line. Those are two guys who I think have been ready for a while to compete with the best guys in the world. I'm talking these guys have the potential to be in the top 15 and work their way up. And so I think they've been deserving for a while. It's just getting that, it's just the business side of the sport, getting that opportunity, getting that one foot in the door. And luckily for those guys, I've got one foot in the door, then they just have to drag the other foot through. And a lot of that's going to be up to them and how they build up and their attitude building up to this fight, and then their performance on the night.
The other thing that happened over the week was that a change of opponent for Carlos, and a bit of a shame really, because he was going to fight someone up the top of the ladder. Now he's fighting someone...
Yeah, slightly below, but the top 15 is... the nature of the top 15 is what separates the number 2, number 4 and number 15 is nothing. Number 15 could easily be number 4, or number 12 could be number 2, or nothing separates these guys. So there is a number next to these guys' name, but it's got nothing to do with the quality of the opponent. They're all just the best guys in the world. So, there's many people that would argue Carlos is jumping into an even harder fight now with Anthony Smith. So, a little bit of a shame that he's not fighting a guy that's ranked above him. And also a bit of a shame that he's not fighting on the Conor McGregor undercard. I think that brings a lot of value to young fighters coming up, when you're on the undercard to the Conor McGregor card. But that is what it is. He's still fighting. We've still got a job to do, so we're going to get after it.
Are there any other options?
I mean, we weren't given... We would have liked to rebook Jamahal Hill, but given that it was kind of open-ended when he was going to come back, we couldn't rest on those laurels, because, it might take him, for all we know, we could be up for a year. So it's best to move on when you don't have that sort of information. And Anthony Smith was the next best available opponent, so Carlos was keen to fight, and he was in the right mindset, and so he was going to fight, no matter who it was.
Talked to Dan last week, and he's telling us he's on the Perth card. Yeah. They're really happy for that. How's his comeback been after the injury?
He's taken it a lot slower this time, and kind of built himself back to the physical contact and the sparring. So camp starts, camp's already started, pre-camp, but camp properly starts this week for him. So yeah, staying positive. I'm sure he will be on the Perth card.
I've seen you doing some work one-on-one there with Kai just before. How's Kai? Because he was another one that was out for quite some time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Kai's got it. To counteract some of Kai having a bit of a long rest between fights, he's got into his camp nice and early. That's what typically kind of happens here. If you've been out for a while, we extend the camp out, to 12 or 16 weeks, just to make up for some of that ring rust and get them into a little bit of physical contact and a bit of conditioning a little bit earlier than, if you've been training and fighting regularly. So he's looking, he's a workhorse. He's looking like pretty typical of what Kai looks like. He could conceivably fight tomorrow and he would be in top shape. But we'll use the rest of the time to just get a few things sharp. And then we should be going into that fight, with heaps of momentum.
Everyone I've spoken to has talked about Izzy, about how strong he is and how different he is, and I've been watching his podcast or whatever they call them things, and he's said that he's got a different attitude and a different work ethic. Something you've noticed?
Yeah, I mean, love what you do and appreciate what you do, and if you haven't done it for a while because you've been out, then show appreciation for it and understand that you might have missed it, and understand that you can't do this forever. I think that's where Israel's at in his head. He's been a bit of a layoff since he last fought, and this is what you were born to do. This is what you love. This is why you were put on this earth, and so I think it's just him coming to appreciate that and making the most of the time that you can do this. So I think that's reflected in his attitude, and it's reflected in the gym at the moment. Just positive and enthusiastic. So you can't ask for more than that. Yeah.
Something I meant to ask you last time, about 3 weeks ago when I spoke to you.
Yeah.
I just watched the technical session that you did with everybody, and it was an escape, and I was really surprised the number of people that after you'd done it, and you just must have made some subtle changes from what they'd been doing, and how many people were coming up to you and coming up to Cobb. How does this work? And is the game gone that far where just those little tiny tweaks make a big difference? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the moment we're doing, we're working pretty intensively on back escapes. So bottom side, top side triangle, overhook, underhook side. A lot of details when you're trying to escape the back in these positions. What we worked on today was just a crossbody ride and a high ball ride escape. These things, the make or break of these things is just a one or two small details, right? So a lot of our sessions like this are very technical sessions. What I encourage people to do is I show the technique and my rendition of the technique, and then I am blessed with having many experienced fighters who have a different rendition of the technique. A few details changed here, a few details changed here.
So what I encourage people to do is take my rendition, go and practice it, take a few other options from other people, amalgamate those together, and then amongst the group have active discussion on what the best approach is and why you're going down a certain direction and a certain path. I have a lot of technical sessions like this, and then we also have sessions where you need to put things into practice. So there'll be like drilling sessions where you're just working on just pure repetition. There'll be sessions where that's live drilling, so you're working on a semi-resisting opponent, and then there'll be live sessions where the opponent gets to kind of give spontaneous reactions instead of a set reaction. So to answer your question, rather long-windedly, yes, the sport's always been about the small finite details and getting those right and making the right decisions.
I might be wrong here, but it seemed to me before somebody got the rear naked choke and it was game over basically, and then we saw Volk get Islam, who's the best at it, one of the best in the world, and he escaped. And now rear naked choke doesn't seem so finalist it used to be.
Nah, for sure. I mean, in terms of percentages, rear naked choke's still the number one submission in the UFC. But that doesn't mean it's an awfully common submission. If you're in the UFC, you should know how to defend a rear naked choke. You should know all the early stage, middle stage and late stage defenses to a rear naked choke. It should be a relatively hard thing to land on someone. Now, in saying that, you have to deal with punches and wrestling and mat returns and top pressure and all sorts of other things. Those are the things that make it hard. Those are the reasons why rear naked chokes become a little bit more of an option in MMA, because you have to deal with all of those things, and at the same time you're trying to fight hands defensively and keep your neck safe. So not as common, but you still see quite a few fights where the person will work their way in a position to get the rear naked choke. Yeah, you have to dedicate a lot of time to defending the back and all the different stages of defending a rear naked choke, for sure.
Come up here on Queen's birthday weekend, and you had a seminar on, and did an interview with Nate before, and he was saying about people taking notes and spending a bit more time warming up and all those sort of things. You always seem to be at the forefront, at the cold face of new things. After, are you ever worried about, hey, it's working, we won't touch anything? You keep adding.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, if you want to be, one of the best in the world, like this team and everybody in it want to be, you've got to the evolvement has to be constant. Otherwise, you fall behind. The only thing I've created a culture of evolvement here. Like, people are constantly trying to search for the next best thing. What's the next best technique? What's the next best strategy? What's the next best way to train this, train that? How do we get inside the mind, the psychology of the people that are fighting? How do you breathe? Everything, right? You're trying to just evolve and stay up with the play. The only thing that really stops you is time. I simply sometimes just run out of time. Otherwise, I would be researching and trying to evolve the team as much as I can. Sometimes you just have so many hours in the day that you can devote to that sort of thing. But there's been a few subtle changes just in the way that we the schedule's working. I just wanted to try something else, and I'm going to run with that and experiment with that for a while, make some tweaks. That might lead to some radical change. At the moment it's subtle, so I think you've always got to be doing that to stay out with the play, to stay out with everybody else. You've always got to keep your eye on what fighters are doing. I'm lucky right now because I don't watch many UFC fights anymore, but all my coaches and all my senior fighters in the gym do. And they're smarter than I am. If they see something that is of note, they'll let me know, and then I can just go straight to that fight instead of having to watch a whole freaking card of UFC fighters. So, people said that there was something very interesting happened in the fight just recently with the Japanese kid. And so I went back and watched the Japanese kid versus Perez, because there was some interesting stuff that was really relevant. He got the body triangle and the guy stood up, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I can just get pointed in the right direction now, so I don't have to watch as many fights. I still watch a lot of boxing because I have a big interest in boxing. I always have, but yeah, just creating a culture of learning and evolving and, constantly trying to just better everything. Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's working.
Oh, good, Tony.
Thanks, mate. Good catch up.
All good.